I thought about what kind of squadron to make. I finally made up my mind. The squadron, which intends to build 2 aircraft, has made corrections to make them black painted Tomcats of VF- for Vandas, and VF-9 Vamps. Vandas plans to produce Tomcat Type A, and Vampires will produce Tomcat Type D, each using an Academy kit. Vandas will use decals from Wolfpack design for Type A, and decals from Def model for Vampires. In particular, I would like to reproduce the D-type that will use the decal of the Def model using several different parts. Both are specially glossy black painted aircraft of the experimental flight team, so I think it will be different from the gray painted Tomcat that I have worked on so far, which is expected to be interesting. The difference between Type A and Type D and the work using update parts from various aftermarket companies will be carried out, and SJU-17 injection seats, which are essential for the manufacture of Type D, are ordered and waiting. No, when the materials and the ordered social seats arrive, we will start working on Black Tomcat as soon as the previous work is completed. Kit works on 2 of the Academy's kits at the same time, as mentioned earlier. I've made 172 Tomcat kits for many companies, but recently I also like Academy kit the most. The following video is an unboxing video of the SJU-17 injection seat. Let's meet through a video next time. Academy key released as a new gold type A Type A, and B Type B is released in addition to the additional work. If you have reference data and refer to some additional components. Korean cartoonist Kim made a book containing 3 types of Tomcat, which made 3 types of Tomcat. VX-9 is thinking about this book. It is a good reference data that is a good reference data, and various data pictures. I love that the overall content of the book is excellent, and includes an illustrator drawn by the author himself. I often refer to this book in Tomcat production, using Academy kit. There is also an overall review video, so I hope you can watch it if time permits. Unfortunately, only the Korean version has been released. Instead, there are many pictures and work machine pictures, so even if you don't know Korean, it is a book that you can fully understand. The SJU-17 injection seat was ordered from a Korean company called Legend. The SJU-17 injection seat used in the Tomcat D type has a different size and length of the breaker in the front and rear heads, so it can be mounted in the correct position during work. It's a resin casting kit, not an injection kit, so it's a very useful part with sharp details. One regrettable thing is that all of the emergency escape lever parts are broken in the front and rear. It's a small part, so I'm going to stick it on well before painting. The preparations for reproducing the 2 black Tomcats are complete. I'm already looking forward to seeing myself fall into the fun of working. See you in the next video. Always enjoy the fun modeling.
Start assembling. It's a familiar start because it's a kit that I've worked on before. I prefer to work on multiple units at the same time. As I said before, we start 2 types of A and D at the same time, using Academy kit. Each painting is glossy black, so it's perfect to work with. The advantage of the Academy 1/72 kit is that it will later include extra parts for variations, making it easier to build other types of aircraft. In this work, we will make the most of those advantages. Additional B types have already been released at the Academy, and we expect D types to come out in the future. The video of this work machine was decided to be 2 black cats. It is a kit that already has experience in manufacturing, so I skipped assembling and started assembling right away. The work began by preparing 2 transparent and large plastic containers, first cutting off the parts, separating the parts to be made into A-type D-type parts, and marking them. Since the benefit point is not so big, and there are small changes, we will carefully mark, separate, trim, and adhere to avoid confusion when assembling. Since you enjoy working on multiple units at the same time, if you don't distinguish well every time, you may be in a difficult situation later, so you should pay attention to the first assembly. If possible, I recommend making one at a time. I'll work hard to trim and paste until I'm ready to start painting. That's it for this video. Thank you for waiting for the next video. I think the recently released new mold kits were released with a lot of user convenience in mind. The Academy's F14 is also excellent in everything, including assembly details, compared to the detention sentence. I prefer to paint as much as possible after assembling and bonding, so if it is a cockpit that has been assembled in advance and can be painted enough, most of it is assembled and painted. This work will also be painted after putting T work on some parts after sufficient assembly and adhesion trimming. I'm so happy that there aren't many parts to modify the bonding line. In the past, kits that were simply divided left and right took a lot of time and effort to fix the bonding line, but recently released kits also make it easier for those who calculate and assemble such points, so I actually want to make only the latest new products. But I think it's hard because I have a lot of kits. Finished assembling, gluing, and simply trimming, and now ready to putty on. With only a small amount of putty, you can modify the joint line, which definitely reduces the workload and time. For the next video, I will prepare a video of putting on putty, drying, and sanding. After most of the assembly, putty work is done to correct the joint line. Add lacquer shiner to the Tamiya putty and paint it with a brush, and apply the putty several times. Apply putty several times repeatedly, while drying several places. The recently released kit from Tamiya Academy is definitely great because the painstaking work of putting on putty and grinding is definitely reduced. Considering the scale, carefully apply putty using a thin brush. Apply the putty several times in the same way, to the mating faces of the fuel, tank, or armament-related parts. Use acrylic putty to fill in the areas where the gap is bigger. Spread and apply enough acrylic putty in the gap, dry it for a certain period of time, and then use an alcohol-coated cotton swab to wipe off the part where the acrylic putty is used to fill the gap. It's a method that's often used in a way that's very simple and has a great effect. The acrylic putty used in the video was worked on using the acrylic putty of Vallejo. Now wait a day or two for the putty to dry well. Before changing the dried putty with sandpaper, the kit itself is made so that it can be reproduced in various forms, so there are some parts that need to be cut and removed in advance, so we proceed with removing it first. The GPS antenna mold on the back of the gas, and the sensor on the upper part of the air intake, are cut and trimmed. Start grinding dry putty, starting with a low number of rough sandpaper. In the case of snow crabs, they are ground using sandpaper 400 and sandpaper 600. Continue grinding well in the order of high number of fine sandpaper. Some of the parts are going to be painted with metal, and that's going to be ground very finely, with more than 2500 sandpaper. Use sandpaper to remove the noticeable parting line. After grinding well, shake off the powder with a brush, toothbrush, etc., and dig again with a model saw or scraper if the panel line disappears or becomes shallow due to sandpaper work. After the sandpaper work, wash the paint thoroughly and dry the water well to complete the preparation for painting. Wash and dry the water with lukewarm water and use neutral detergent. I'm going to paint the parts that need to be painted first. Before painting, you can see the mold pushed out inside the air intake, so you correct it and start painting. I usually work with lacquer paint. Using GSI Creus lacquer as the main, the white color used in this video is GSI Creus lacquer number 316, which is a white color exclusively for aircraft. Use an airbrush to paint. For the proper paint and concentration of diluent, I prefer a diluent ratio that is as smooth as water. Most of the areas where white should be painted are painted. Paint the inside of the nose and main landing gear reservoir, the inside of the exhaust port of the engine, the inside of the nose and main landing gear, the inside of the engine nozzle, and any small parts that require paint. When the white paint is finished, let the painted paint dry well and proceed to the next task. There is a way to paint black and then white after masking, but it's hard to paint white on top of black to cover up the black on the bottom. So I decided to paint white first and then paint the whole thing black after masking. You have finished painting white on several parts. I'll come back with a masking video even if I dry it well. Please wait for the next video. This time, we're going to cover up the white area that was painted before the entire color, glossy black. You can paint glossy black first and then white after masking, but white is greatly affected by the color painted underneath. So we paint white first and glossy black for good coloration. I use a masking tape to cover the areas that should be white. After attaching the masking tape to the rubber mat first, cut it into the right size and then attach pieces to the desired location. Mask the inside of the air intake as well. I use the book I introduced in the video for masking. It's a bit of a hassle because it's a bit of a work to do, but the results later on are quite good. Since it has to be painted at an angle, we also work together to cut and paste the masking tape at the right angle and prevent the glossy black from being painted inward. Mask the part where the landing wheel will be stored in advance. Some of them are painted white on the east side, so it also masks them well. Even if you mask it carefully, there are cases where the paint that is counted and sprayed gets on, and we will deal with it again in the later video when we see the counting part. Usually, we use a thin brush to fix it. I'm done with the masking. Here's a video of finally painting the full index glossy black. Paint the glossy black color that covers most of the F-14 Tomcat. The paint used is a paint using an airbrush using the Creus Gloss Black lacquer color. It is better to paint glossy black evenly on the part that has been masked in advance. Airbrush work has the advantage of painting the desired color fine and evenly, but it is often applied with caution because particles of mispaint are half dried or sprayed too much in one place.
The color of glass is over. I ordered a little bit of the mask that was covered with white color. There are no tree, but there are some parts that have been painted on white top of black. I'm so worried about drinking and modify white colors and modify white color. The mask is a cold in the color of the plane model. I think it's a power to make a plane model. It's a very annoying process, but I worked. Before the paint is sufficiently dry, it should proceed with a partial color before making a partial color.
There are parts that need to be assembled and bonded after masking and painting. Assemble and glue after checking if the paint is well painted. After the glossy black paint is sufficiently dried, the following work is carried out. Dry it for a few days, as it is. After painting glossy black and letting it dry for a few days, prepare masking for partial painting. Take a good look at the painting guide first and start masking to paint areas that require partial painting. put the masking tape on the rubber mat first, then cut a certain size, and attach it to the desired position. In this work, metal colors are applied to the front engine part of the wing. Cut and paste thoroughly, and proceed with partial painting. In masking the curved or complex parts, I usually prefer to cut the masking tape into small pieces and then stick it on. Wide and long areas can be attached at once, but cutting and attaching masking tapes for curved or uneven parts helps clean work. Instead, it takes some time. When painting with an airbrush, do enough masking so that there is no paint that is counted and painted carefully. This time, I was especially careful because it was a metal color. Metal colors were applied to the engine part, at the rear of the gas, the front part of the main wing, and a part of the air intake. After partial painting is finished and drying for a while, carefully peel off the masking tape. Check carefully to see if the paint has been strengthened and there is nothing painted on other parts. For safe next work, dry the partially painted metal colors for a few days, and prepare for the next work. It is important to dry it well first because we are planning to coat the gloss finish material once before the decal and weathering work. The part that is not in Type D should be corrected first. The hole that adheres to the external temperature sensor component on the left in front of the cockpit should be blocked. In the case of B-type late stage or D-type, the external temperature sensor is abolished and is an unnecessary hole, so it should be blocked in this work. It's a difficult situation if you found it with more work in progress, but with the help of a younger brother you found it early and are revising it. Paint the ejection seat of the cockpit. The paint used is lacquer and painted with a brush. Type A injection seats are included in the kit, and Type D is painted using the resin sold separately, as you saw in the previous video. Since it is a small size satchel seat, the painting was carried out to enhance the overall feeling. The part where the light color is to be painted first, and the rest of the dark color is painted later. By painting the seatbelt, the basic painting of the injection seat has been completed. My own way to look detailed is to paint the uneven parts with a model-colored pencil, as if they were dry brushing pencil. It's a skill that I often use because it shows a good effect on a small scale, in a simple way. I finished painting injection seats for Type A, and Type D. The hole that you saw earlier was dried. So the putty was ground well with fine sandpaper, wiped the ground powder with alcohol cotton, and painted glossy black again. It's so giddy if you found it after putting on a decal lamp. It's a relief that we proceeded with the modification work early. I waited until the paint dried up a little. Proceed with the following tasks. This time, we're going to paint the cockpit. First, apply masking before applying the basic color. I used GSI's Locker Paint number 317 as the color. I worked on the dashboard in the cockpit with a decal. It was done by using decal glue and softener properly and neatly sticking to the correct position. The decal design and the well-printed kit are very good fitting. Thanks to you, I simply recreated the panel in the cockpit. The cockpit operation is completed by gluing each panel part to the correct position. F-14D Tomcat's cockpit. F-14A Tomcat's cockpit. After drying it well, put decal on the whole thing. Prior to attaching the decal, the entire plane is washed first. Since it is a black body, I work with gray, a bright Tamiya panel line accent color. In fact, it is impossible in reality, but it was washed in bright colors as a model exaggeration. Apply the Tamiya panel line accents color all over the panel line and leave it for a while, then wash it by wetting the Tamiya X-20 enamel, thinner enough, with a cotton swab. Washing was carried out by repeating the cleaning operation with a cotton swab buried with thinner several times.
I had to do it after painting the glossy finish material once, but I feel a little lacking in the work in a hurry.
The landing gear storage unit performs washing in a dark color. The landing gear was also partially painted and washed using a dark Tamiya panel line accent color. After washing, firmly attach the landing gear parts to the fuselage. If the glue hardens well, we will move on to the decal. Start working on the decals. First, it's Black Bunny, or F14A of VX-4 bandies. We use decals released by Wolfpack Design. I like it because it's simple, because it's the decal of the experimental squadron. It's a water slide decal, so you can cut the parts you want to put on, soak it in water, and attach it to the desired position. The anti-slip part of the step line is in stencil, so it was reproduced using it. Apply the decal adhesive to the desired location, and after attaching the decal, work by draining the moisture between the surface and the decal with a cotton swab or flat brush. Repeat the same procedure several times. I recommend you work slowly with patience. There is a magazine that reminds me of a rabbit wearing a tuxedo. I think a lot of people agree, but these days, it's kind of sad that it's not the age of magazines. I remember sneaking out the Playboy magazine that I had at home when I was young and watching it with my friends. I think about everything while making a model. That's why I love making models. Use decal softener to make the curved parts stick well. There weren't many knives to attach, so I quickly attached them all. After drying the decal well, we will start the next work. I put on all the Black Bunny from Bandis that I started putting on first. The second is the VX-9 Vampire Decals. It's a decal released by DEF Model and Site Design. Also, the number of knives to be attached to the experimental flight unit is small. I'm actually very relieved. It's the logo designed a bat, but one is like blood. Looking at the data, I don't know if Bambi is a mistake, and I don't know whether it's a simple print. Although there's a bunny in the same plane, we will put a bat in the same plane for difference with the previous work. As expected, it is a water slide method, so you cut it well and soak it in water to attach it to the desired position. It's a little more colorful than the black bunny I worked on earlier, and there are a little more decals to attach. However, it is very small compared to the decals of modern fighter models, so it was possible to attach them quickly. Look carefully at the decals attached, drain the moisture, and check them to make them stick well. When the decal is finished, the main wing is attached to the fuselage. Dry it for a few days so that the decals stick well and the main wings stick well, and then proceed with the next work. I forgot to paint small parts and wash them. I started making another plane, but I'm rushing to finish this project quickly. I paint small parts well and wash them. It is recommended that you work on things that are as small or annoying as possible if you work later. The red line inside the landing gear cover was simply reproduced with a name pen. It's simpler and more convenient than using a brush, and it's finished quickly. When you draw a red line with a name pen, it's better to draw the line at once. Please consider the tip part of the name pen as well. If the tip is not sharp due to long-term use, it is rather counterproductive, so it is better to work with a pen with a soft tip and a lot of pigment still left inside. The parts such as the end of the landing gear cover is firmly attached to the position of the body. Most of the guide pin, but some parts are not right. If you don't fit, cut some of the guide pin and fix the adhesive. When small parts are working after work, it's a little part of the work, so I'll proceed well and fix it in the end of the work, and fix it well. After painting the glossy finish and drying, the next small parts and arming light are attached. We should have worked on the arming of bomb missiles first, but we put it off and then we're driving and painting it. To do it quickly, paint using a brush, not an airbrush. It's a small part, so I pay attention to the brushwork. It's a small part, so I worked on it with less attention to the brush strokes. After the painting is finished and dried well, the washing is also carried out. Fortunately, the F-14 Tomcat is not very armed. The engine nozzle color is also swollen. First of all, the bottom of the black color and the bottom of the metal color is dry. The second chip uses a Weber of the engine nozzle, using the Weber of the engine nozzle. It's a small part of a small part, but it feels better. Most of the weathering was done by using a cotton swab to express the discoloration of part of the nozzle of the engine, due to exhaust heat from the engine. Each armed forces have been finished with the sword after the war. The head of the device is well attached to pylon. It's good to fix it. I like to insert the guide pin, and I did the job this time. The armed parts that are easy to reduce the guide pin, to produce additional guidelines as possible. Now, I think it's just left the clinic and the end of the clinic. Then, I'll see you in the last production. Good subscription is love. I'm working on the last minute. When I took off the masking of the canopy, some of the finishing material was counted, resulting in a bit of cloudiness. Use a cotton swab to wipe off the blurred area, and put the canopy part on well. Apply the clear green on the front with a brush. It also attaches small antennas, and various sensor parts. It is recommended that small parts be attached at the end of the fabrication work as much as possible. Paint the fuel exhaust mark on the tail of the fuselage with a brush. Parts that use clear paint, such as flying lights, are also painted with finishing materials and brush paint after drying. If you apply the cleaner paint first and apply the finishing material, the parts of the clear paint that you applied first turn blurry, so be sure to raise the order. Finally, by painting clear red on the TV sight window in the front, the fabrication of the F-14 experimental squadron aircraft, which was started because of the intro that my cousin of the designer sent me, was finished. Thank you for making the intro of the video, and thank you for watching the video. I'll upload a model machine every day, so please support, encourage, like, and subscribe. If possible, please give me an alarm. I think there were some differences between the context and the content of the video because the English voice was translated automatically. Please be generous. The limitations of content that I make by myself are clear, but I will continue to make and upload it. Thank you very much.
이재명 대통령이 계속해서 이제 9.19 군사 합의에 대해서 그 중에서도 특히 군사 연습과 그 비행을 굉장히 정찰이다 이런 생각이 있는데 그랬다 보니까 감시와 정찰 얘기를 한 게 이 9.19 선언을